there's so much happening here. And what I'll add is I, like Roberta, like Lisa, am working in at least 5 different avenues, 5 different channels. I am the vice president and artistic director of social impact at the Kennedy Center. So I do have an institutional perch. It's interesting working at an institution that has a federal adjacency and working in this sector in that way. There are some things that, quite frankly, I cannot do through my institutional perch that I am more able and have greater flexibility to do in my consultancy perch. So I've been hosting a series of workshops called Healing Forward that are really about this idea of systemic allyship. The institutional goal, not unlike what Lisa's talking about with the 10-20-30 pledge, the institutional goal is to have a culture of systemic belonging that is measured quantitatively, is also measured qualitatively. The mantra that I repeat over and over again is that we all want to be anti-racist, but we also talk about structural racism. And if racism is structural, then anti-racism also must be structural. So these Healing Forward workshops kind of articulate a plan for arts workers, for folks working in the cultural sector, to think about pipeline, pedagogy, programs, and profiles as ways of developing this culture of systemic belonging or systemic allyship. And the next such workshop will be in a couple of weeks. I am also in my artist body. And as a means of transitioning to our next piece, I want to ask a bunch of creative questions and then begin to talk about healing. So, the questions pertain to some more institutional work that we're doing at the Kennedy Center, which is around the idea of dignity. Alan referenced that the Met, in its 138-year history, has just presented or begun to present its first opera by a Black composer. And working at the Kennedy Center, I have the privilege of working in the realm of classical music too. And these are some of the questions that have launched a piece that we're working on there called the Cartography Project. The questions begin: what if dignity were currency? And our business model depended on spinning the capital of dignity into the capital of finance? What if when we said equity, we didn't mean everybody's in the house? We meant equity like what you have if you own your house. We invested in inclusion to produce equity for diverse communities, which means more than putting on shows or producing symbols. Though the matter of Black life itself is controversial, surely Black dignity couldn't possibly be cause for alarm. What if all this dis-ease was a prompt for an entrepreneurial reframe, like the explosion of crypto as currency? What if we treated the art of cultivating dignity as an intentional economy? If the product were empathy and you had to make it, and you had to make it mass accessible, what raw materials would you use? What if dignity were currency and the raw material to make it was culture? What if you worked at a cultural mint and you printed white walls and bright lights in the aesthetic sublime 80% of the time, but 20% of every dime was spent minting cultural equity for the historically left behind? Equity, not like proportional balance, equity like profit on your P&L balance. Who in this country is manufacturing empathy? Just a little bit. And in the end, wouldn't we all benefit? What if dignity were medicine, were a vaccine, and the public and private sector teamed up to invest in our collective healing, and our country's cultural mints were the place where anybody could get pricked with the sharp edge of culture, a chemical boost included us all, because we've just learned that if I'm healthy and you're sick, I'm at risk. Why risk emerging from this moment in a culturally unhealthy way? Why put a cultural inflection point to waste? What if the product were collective healing, and in order to do it, we had to practice more cooperative economics, except no one would buy it if it wasn't fly. So to heal, we had to invest in artists, invested in their individual projects, but used artist intellect to mass produce dignity and put as much equity in it as you would a non-fungible token of a digital object. We make value. Diversity is not a stock to be left alone to accrue. Diversity is a paper-thin bill that you gotta keep stacking, or else you're not serious. What if you were making a city? My friend Deborah Cullinan always asks, how many great artists does it take to make a great city? How many artists does it take to make America great? If you had equity stakes in empathy, who would you invest in first? In the ecosystem of cultural production, what if we all win if we all win? What if we didn't all have to win? We just all remembered when the world was sick and collective healing was something we were all invested in. What if nobody got left behind? What if we healed forward cardinal directions, truth, dimension, humanity, access, latitudes of public imagination, longitudinal public policy, XYZ axis, access the ancestors, call their names, map the future, collective dignity, the moral compass, invest in the road forward, use culture as brick, and walk the walk.